So let's move on to the co-main event of the evening, probably the most exciting fight on the card. Tony Ferguson versus Charles Oliveira. What do you got for us, Paul?
Let's be real. This is the people's main event. The only reason this is not the main event is because the title isn't strapped to it. I get so excited for this fight all week. I'm very, very excited to see it this weekend. I think there's so many different ways to break down this fight. Charles Oliveira is on an absolute tear in terms of the streak he's been on. But I think then you have to break down the level of competition that he's been fighting, right? Tony Ferguson is the boogeyman of the 155-pound division. There's not a single person he doesn't pose threats for. And if we look at the guys that Charles Oliveira's beaten, Clay Guida, Christopher Giagos, I don't even know if he's in the UFC anymore, washed up Jim Miller, David Tamor, Nick Lentz, Jared Gordon, again, not that impressive. And then Kevin Lee is probably arguably his most impressive win. And we've seen that Kevin Lee is not exactly what we thought he would have been in the UFC at this point. So not taking anything away from there, I think Charles Oliveira has kind of walked into his prime here. He's on a very good streak. He's got very good submission threat skills. Never been too impressed with his striking. I think it's coming along. I think he got better in his most recent fight against Kevin Lee. That was interesting to see there. So I think he's a dangerous opponent. I think this is a good matchup. I think this is the right time for Charles Oliveira to take this fight. And the reason I say that is segueing into Tony Ferguson is he is coming off a loss after I don't remember if it was 11 or 12. His massive win streak eventually got snapped, right? He was obviously fighting for the title next. Yeah, so it's very impressive. And I mean, he's fought the best of the best, Tony. He's always game. He always takes these fights. And, he lost to Gaethje, but as we know, Gaethje is, arguably number 2 in the world right now. Khabib is retired, but, he was just fighting for the belt. So very interesting fight there. Those punches round 5. I think that was a good stoppage by the ref. Tony was just taking unnecessary damage at that point. I think if this was a 5-round fight, I would favor Tony all day. I think the cardio would overcome Charles. I think it would be just like, I think he would just put it on. We've seen Charles kind of crumble in the past. It's been a while since that's happened to him. He hasn't really crumbled or anything like that. But Tony, he trains under Eddie Bravo. He's got a very impressive black belt from 10 Planet BJJ. Very crafty guy. Those elbows and knees are just absolutely brutal. And, I think his cardio is just on another level. So 3-round fight, I think it's closer. I am going to side with Tony Ferguson here. He's got so much there. I think the only question revolving around Tony Ferguson is, did he get broken a little bit after that Justin Gaethje fight? So I think we're really going to see this weekend. He's a -170 favorite. Charles Oliveira coming back at +140. I think that's pretty appropriate, but I'm going to go with Tony Ferguson this weekend. I'm very excited for this fight.
So so with Charles Oliveira, we have to mention that he has the most submission wins in the UFC as of right now. He has 19. And looking at Tony's losses, he only has 1 loss via submission. So that's something interesting to look at. Charles Oliveira is currently on a 7-fight win streak. As you mentioned, he has names like Kevin Lee, Jared Gordon, Jim Miller, David Tamor. Obviously not as impressive as a resume that Tony Ferguson has with people like Cowboy Cerrone, Barboza, Kevin Lee, RDA, Anthony Pettis. These names are just on a different level. So with Tony Ferguson, there's 2 things. So one is his age. In his last fight with Justin Gaethje, in his last fight, to me, he didn't look the same. Some people say that he looked tired, maybe he overtrained, but he just didn't look the same to me as he has prior to that fight. So given that, I'm gonna go with Charles Oliveira on this fight. I think Charles Oliveira is he has the momentum going right now. And Tony Ferguson just absorbed so much damage in his last fight. He's getting older. I feel like he's also on the tail end of his career, so I'm going to side with Oliveira. Although this is good, I feel like this could be a very close fight, so this is going to be a fun one.
So I actually thought this was the perfect matchup to make even a couple of months ago. So I'm very glad that they matched up Tony Ferguson with Oliveira. I think just stylistically, out of everyone in the top 10, I think that's the most intriguing matchup. That being said, Oliveira is on a very impressive win streak. He's on a 7-fight win streak with the most submissions in the UFC right now at 19 submissions, which is, that's just very incredible, especially in a division like the lightweight division that's so stacked. I think a lot of people have been overlooking Oliveira just because of the level of the top 5 competition in lightweight. You got Dustin, Justin, Tony, Connor, like Khabib. So much talk going on at the top of the division that they kind of overlook the rest of the people. So I think Charles Oliveira is someone that's very, very underrated as far as his UFC career and just his MMA in general. I think Tony Ferguson needs this win a lot more just because of, he was on a much longer streak and he lost to someone who everyone thought he was going to blow right through. Credit to Tony, though. He was training for Khabib, which was a completely different, stylistic matchup. It was a different training camp, I'm sure, than what he would have trained if he had a full camp for Justin. But that being said, and Paul, touching on what you said, it is going to depend on how much he did break, if he did break mentally. See, this is still the same savage Tony Ferguson that was in your face, the high pace, high output. It's going to depend. We're going to see that, I think, within the first minute or two as soon as the bell rings. And I think another big factor that you mentioned, which a lot of people are overlooking, is this is a 3-round fight. I think a handful of both of their last fights have been 5-round fights. And one of Tony's most dangerous weapons is his cardio and his capability to take you into those deep waters. And just, his opponents just can't keep up with that outpace so late in the fight. And him not having this tool, I think, in this fight, I think we're going to see a little bit more exciting Tony Ferguson, just being a little bit more out there and just to see some more crazy techniques that he has. So yeah, I think the shorter time limit might make it a little bit more interesting. I don't know who I'm rooting for this one. I think either way I'll be satisfied. These are two, like I said, this is one of the best matchups you can make in lightweight right now. So I don't really know if I'm on a side right now.
I think a couple of really interesting points there. From a betting perspective, this is actually probably going to be one of the fights that I'm staying off this weekend because I think I'm a little too emotionally invested in this, honestly. So I never like to bet emotionally, anything like that. If I do like a fighter too much, I think Eric, something really interesting you brought up was Tony's streak. Now that it's snapped, I think he really needs this fight. If he does lose this, he's not going to be right there for title contention again. If he wins this, it's going to be like, okay, Justin was a slip up. Let's get this guy in there, fight for the title again. If not, he's going to be right on death's row. And speaking of the division, like you said, 155 is the most stacked division, in my opinion. The top 5, even the top 10 guys are all incredible. I mean, just another level. I think a lot of those guys can move up or down in weight and be top 10 or 5 in other divisions as well. And I think something interesting, John, that you said was Tony, he did look tired in that fight. We saw towards rounds 4 and 5, he was actually slowing down, and Justin kept his cardio up, which normally it's the opposite of those fights. I think something to mention there, Tony did cut weight 2 times in a very short time limit. He was preparing for that Khabib fight. He did successfully cut weight. He didn't have to. I don't know if that was the smartest decision he's ever made. So something to probably take into account there. He did make those 2 weight cuts. I don't know if it was that smart, but that could have definitely, I think, played into that fatigue and things like that. Overall, this is going to be an incredible fight, though.